I've always had a thing for road trips, not the kind where you pack a bag and make a playlist, but those random late-night drives where you can't quite tell if you're chasing something or just trying to leave something behind. Ever since I was little, my mom used to joke I had some bloodhound in me the way I'd beg to tag along any time my Uncle Wesley or my older cousin Caleb headed out somewhere. Didn't really matter where they were going, gas station, hardware store, that dusty old bookstore in town, I just wanted to be in the car. Maybe it was because home never felt like the kind of place you wanted to stick around for too long. Back then, we lived in a speck of a place called Merrow Creek. If you blinked, you'd miss it. Just a few rusted street signs, a busted-up main road full of potholes, and maybe 3 spots anyone gave a damn about. There was Dino's, a greasy little pizza joint, that sad movie rental place with sun-faded posters in the window, and Holloway's Liquor Way out near the edge of town. We weren't really a drinking family, but my grandma swore by this cheap sherry called Starlight Gold that only Holloway's kept in stock. She used to say it helped her sleep, though I always figured it was more about numbing the ache of missing my granddad, who died when I was 6. It was on a night like any other, late September, that kind of bone-deep chill in the air and a sky the color of wet ash, when this happened. I was about 14 then, old enough to be left alone, but still young enough to think any outing after dark was some kind of big deal. Caleb, who was 19 and greasy from work at the auto shop, swung by the house after his shift. "Hey," he called from the porch, flipping his keys around like he was born doing it. "Your Gran's out of her Starlight. You wanna ride along?" I don't think I even answered. I just grabbed my hoodie, told my mom real quick, and was already halfway down the porch steps before she could say no. I remember how the air smelled, wet leaves and the distant hint of somebody burning brushwood nearby. Caleb's beat-up Chevy was already rumbling in the driveway, headlights casting long streaks over the cracked pavement. I climbed in, like I always did, and that seatbelt still barely worked. The radio was spitting out static and some gritty rock tune from that Carterville station we could only catch when the weather was just right. "You good going in this time?" Caleb asked as we rolled onto the road. I shrugged. "Aren't kids not allowed in there or something?" He just smirked. "Not if nobody catches you." That was Caleb all over, reckless in a way that somehow made you trust him more, not less. Holloway's Liquor looked just as busted as always. A squat little box of a building with metal bars over the windows and a neon sign that only lit up "Core," since the rest had burned out some time back when Clinton was president. The parking lot was mostly gravel, with scraggly grass poking through the cracks like it gave up trying. There was a heaviness to the place, something in the air that pressed on you, not anything you could point at, but you felt it just the same. As we pulled in, I noticed a single other car, a faded blue Buick parked all crooked near the back corner, nothing moving inside. The lamp hanging above it buzzed and flickered, like it was barely hanging on to life. "You sure this place ain't cursed?" I joked, trying to sound like I wasn't creeped out. Caleb chuckled. "Total dumpy, yeah? But it's the only place that sells that crap your grandma drinks." He threw it in park, left the engine running, and reached into the glove box for a folded-up bill. "Back in 5. Don't let anyone steal the car." I rolled my eyes and hit the locks the second he stepped out. Wasn't about being scared, it was just habit by then. I liked having a layer of glass and steel between me and the world. The radio sputtered, some old rock track half lost in static. I leaned my head against the cold window, watching Caleb disappear through the door. And that's when I saw him. A man, standing right at the edge of the woods that lined the back of the lot, just outside the reach of the flickering light. Mid-50s, maybe older, face rough and leathery, hair a wild mess of gray. He wasn't moving. Just standing there. Watching. At first, I figured maybe he was waiting for someone to pick him up. But then he stepped forward, and his face pulled into this huge grin that made my skin crawl. It wasn't just the smile. It was the way he held it, like his face didn't know how to wear it right. The radio crackled again, and I instinctively hit the lock button. Twice, even though I already knew it was locked. Another step. Then one more. Now he was close enough that I could see everything, the stains on his jacket, his filthy nails, that weird glassy look in his eyes under the light. He raised a hand and waved. My throat clenched. I didn't wave back. He said something, but the music was still going and the windows were shut tight, so it all came out muffled. Come on, I thought, glancing at the store. Caleb, where the hell are you? I grabbed my phone. No bars. Of course. Dead zone, just like always in Merrill Creek. When I looked back up, the guy was right there, driver's side, just inches away. He slapped the glass with his palm. Sharp. Deliberate. My heart felt like it was trying to claw its way up my throat. He mouthed something. Roll it down, sweetheart. I shook my head and shrank back, palms sweating against the seat. He leaned in, his breath fogging the glass. Then he pointed toward the passenger door, like telling me to unlock it. That's when I caught it, movement behind him. 2 more guys coming out of the shadows near the Buick. One was heavy, wearing a busted-up ball cap, the other tall and gaunt with cheeks like hollows and eyes too damn wide. They weren't rushing. Just strolling in that slow, creepy way like they already knew how this was gonna go. My pulse was hammering in my ears. Caleb, I whispered, eyes darting to the store. The big one chuckled, couldn't hear it, but somehow I still felt it. He smacked the lanky one on the chest and pointed straight at me. I scrambled for the horn and slammed it down. The blaring noise shattered the stillness. Caleb came bursting out of the liquor store, bottle in hand, his face going from confused to pissed in about half a second. What the hell? He shouted, marching toward the car. The guy at my window finally backed off, but not before giving me one last look, that same awful, too wide grin stretched across his face. Then he turned and gave a little signal to the others, and just like that, they slipped back into the shadows like they'd never been there at all. Caleb yanked open the driver's side door, his face tight, eyes scanning the lot. You okay? I just gave a quick nod, couldn't get any words out, like they were stuck somewhere between my chest and my throat. We barely spoke on the way back. He kept glancing over at me, one hand clamped around the wheel like it was the only thing keeping him steady. When we pulled into the driveway, he shut off the engine and sat there for a second, breathing hard. You lock the doors every time, yeah? Yeah. He nodded once, sharp. Good. We didn't say a word to anyone. Not my mom. Nobody. And for a while, I let myself believe maybe it hadn't been that bad. Maybe it was just a few drunk weirdos playing around. But then a week later, a girl from the next town over vanished outside a convenience store. They never found her. I haven't set foot near Holloway since. I've always felt like bad luck runs in my blood. Even when I was a kid, strange and unsettling stuff just had this way of finding me. Like the neighbor who used to watch me through his blinds for hours, or that 8th grade substitute teacher who showed up outside my part-time job one night, smiling like it was perfectly normal. There's always been someone. Maybe it's because I'm small, barely 5'1", just over 120 pounds, easy to mistake for someone younger than I am. Or maybe it's just how the world is, and how some people don't need a reason to be messed up. About a year ago, after scraping together what little cash I had and calling in a few favors from my cousin Trevor, I finally got my own place. It wasn't much, just a narrow 3rd-floor 1-bedroom in an old building off Cypress Avenue, about half a mile from the nearest gas station and liquor store. The walls were paper-thin. You could hear your neighbor's TV shows word for word, and the hallway always reeked like burnt toast and bleach. But it was mine. And for someone like me, that felt like a win. Most days, I loved the quiet. I could leave dishes in the sink, sprawl in the middle of the bed, blast sad 90s R&B at 2 in the morning if I felt like it. But even with that bit of freedom, a part of me always stayed on edge. I double-checked the deadbolt every night, kept a hot pink can of pepper spray clipped to my keys, and figured out which walking routes had the least number of alleyways. You grow up a girl in this world, that kind of caution gets wired into your bones. Last Friday, everything just felt heavy. Work was a mess. My boss chewed me out over some late invoice that wasn't even mine, and my phone kept lighting up with texts from Damien, my ex, like he suddenly remembered I existed. I was fried, frustrated, and just wanted something to take the edge off. Not hard liquor or anything crazy, just a bottle of red, maybe a halfway decent Merlot. Oak Ridge Liquors was only a quarter-mile from my place, past a couple of auto shops and a boarded-up laundromat. I'd done the walk more times than I could count. I grabbed my sunglasses, shoved my wallet and keys into my hoodie pocket, and popped in my wireless earbuds. It was early evening, still bright out, and there was a nice breeze cutting through the last of the day's heat. I told myself the walk might help me cool off. As I stepped outside, Aaliyah's "One in a Million" started playing in my ears, and for the first time all day, I smiled. I had just reached the end of my block when I noticed the car. A white Hyundai Elantra, maybe late 2000s. The kind of car that's so common, you don't even clock it. It was sitting at the stop sign to my left, engine still running, driver's window down. The man behind the wheel looked mid-40s, dark beard streaked with gray, wearing a faded baseball cap. And he was staring right at me. I gave him a polite, tight-lipped smile, just enough to acknowledge, not enough to mean anything. It's what we're taught to do, right? Just a little courtesy to avoid trouble. Smile small, don't invite, don't offend. He smiled back, but he held it too long. I kept walking. The intersection at Westmere Boulevard was a block ahead, where I'd cross and head toward the liquor store. I turned my focus to the music, fiddling with the volume to distract myself. When I reached the crosswalk, I hit the button and stood there waiting, watching the traffic go by. Then I saw the Elantra again, pulling into the gas station lot across the street. My stomach gave a little twist. But I told myself I was being dramatic. People run errands. Maybe he needed gas. Or a soda. Or cigarettes. The light changed. I crossed. When I looked back, the car was still there, parked, engine off. And he was still watching me. I sped up. 1 block later, I made it to Oak Ridge Liquors, a squat little building with a neon sign that buzzed and flickered every time it rained. Inside, the air was cool and smelled like old wood and chilled concrete. Franklin, the owner, stood behind the counter like always. He's probably in his 50s, grumpy as hell but a decent guy. I'd known him since I moved in. "Evening, Lexi," he said, glancing up from a crossword puzzle. "Hey, Frank," I said, trying to sound normal, forcing a smile. He frowned a little, noticing something in my face. "You good?" I hesitated for a second, then nodded toward the door. "There's this guy. White Elantra. I think he might have followed me from my place, or something. He's been watching me." Franklin's eyes narrowed. "You want me to call someone? Or I can walk you home if you want." "I'll be alright," I lied. "Maybe he already took off." I wandered over to the wine aisle and pretended to browse, dragging my fingers along dusty bottles of Dark Horse and 19 Crimes. I grabbed a bottle of Ménage à Trois Midnight Red Blend, cheap, familiar, and peeked out the front window. The white car was gone. Franklin caught me looking. "He gone?" "I think so. I mean it, Lexi. If you're not sure, I'll walk you back." "No big deal." "Thanks, Frank. I'll be quick." I paid and slipped the bottle into one of those small brown bags, the kind that crinkles like it's holding something heavier than it is. My stomach was still tight, knotted up, but I told myself it was nothing. He probably just needed gas or smokes or something. It's not illegal to sit at a gas station. I stepped outside and scanned the lot. Empty. The walk back looked exactly like the one there. Same busted sidewalk, same hum of cicadas in the trees, same scruffy hedges lining the curb. I passed the old laundromat again, where a half-dead payphone hung by its cord like something out of a horror movie. I was halfway to Westmere when I heard it. "Hey, where you headed?" My blood turned to ice. I spun around. He was standing next to his car, half hidden behind the hedges near the bus stop, like he'd been waiting there the whole damn time. "Jesus Christ," I muttered. He stepped forward, hands up like he was trying to prove he wasn't dangerous. "Hey, didn't mean to scare you. I just thought you looked familiar, that's all." My fingers closed tight around my keys, my thumb brushing over the pepper spray button. "I don't know you," I said, flat and firm, already putting distance between us. But he kept coming, that greasy smile still plastered across his face. "Come on, don't be like that. Just trying to be friendly. What's your name?" "Back the fuck off," I snapped, lifting the can of spray. He stopped, eyes flicking to it. The grin faded a little. All right, he mumbled, putting his hands up and shuffling back toward the car. "No need to be a bitch about it." I didn't wait. I took off running, full sprint down the street, past the intersection, legs screaming as I cut through the gas station lot and ducked into the narrow alley between the Thai place and a boarded-up nail salon. I crouched behind a dumpster, my chest heaving, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and texted Franklin, "He's back. Call the cops." I stayed there, tucked in the shadows, the stench of old grease and soggy cardboard wrapping around me like a blanket I didn't ask for. My fingers ached from clutching the pepper spray so hard. Every little noise, a car door somewhere, a bottle rattling down the alley, made my stomach twist tighter. It felt like forever, but then I heard it. Sirens. First distant, then closer. Red and blue lights spilled across the brick walls as a cruiser rolled into the lot. "Lexi?" a voice called. It was Franklin. I peeked around the corner and saw him standing with a cop, pointing toward the alley. I got to my feet, though my legs felt like rubber, heavy and slow. The officer, a tall woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and a no-bullshit look about her, motioned me over. "You the one who called this in?" I nodded. "Franklin did?" I texted him. "The guy, he followed me. White Elantra. Mid-40s. Beard. Hat." She glanced at her partner, who was already sweeping the lot with a flashlight. "We didn't see anyone matching that. Franklin says he took off toward the west side." "Of course he did. Do you want to file a report?" she asked. I hesitated. Part of me just wanted to go home, deadbolt the door, crawl into bed and pretend none of it happened. But I was so damn tired of pretending. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I do." They took my statement right there, scribbling everything down as I told them about the car, his face, the way he looked at me, the things he said, where he was parked. Franklin stayed back but didn't leave until they were finished. By then, the sirens were gone, and the sky had faded into that deep, endless shade of blue. Franklin walked me home, just like he said he would. We didn't talk much, didn't need to. At my door, he waited until I was inside before heading off. I locked it. Deadbolt. Chain. Then leaned back against it, eyes closed. The apartment felt way too quiet. Too still. I peeled off my hoodie, set the wine on the counter, and sank down onto the couch. My body was still buzzing, skin prickling at every sound outside. I knew he was gone, for now. But I also knew the kind of world we lived in. People like him don't just disappear. They wait. They loop back. Or they find someone else. I glanced at my phone. No new texts. No missed calls. No unknown numbers. I made a promise to myself right then. I wouldn't let this make me smaller. Wouldn't let fear shrink my life to the size of this room. I cracked the bottle open and took a long, burning swig straight from the neck. It tasted like battery acid and defiance. I wasn't okay. But I was still here. And some nights, that's enough. I used to think small towns were supposed to be safe. You know, the kind of place where everybody knows everybody. And the biggest drama is someone's kid getting caught sneaking a smoke behind the gas station. That's what I grew up believing. Hell, that's how I lived, until I moved to Dry Creek, Oklahoma. On the surface, it looks harmless enough. Just another sleepy town with a crumbling downtown strip and fields that stretch out forever. But underneath? It's rotting from the inside out. Meth runs through this place thicker than blood. You can't even grab a damn coffee without some strung-out dude asking if you've got a lighter. I didn't grow up here. I ended up in Dry Creek by accident, fell for a guy, packed up my whole life in Arkansas, and wound up sharing a one-bedroom in a squat brick building across from an abandoned church. His name's Noah. Ex-Marine. Tattooed knuckles. Quick to laugh, but quick to blow up if you messed with something, or someone, he cared about. We weren't big drinkers or anything. A beer here, a glass of wine there. But Noah had a thing for whiskey. Especially Buffalo Trace. It was his way to unwind, one shot straight, maybe two if the day had kicked his ass. 3 weeks ago, when all this went down, we were smack in the middle of moving chaos. Boxes stacked to the ceiling, kitchen half-packed, mattress still on the floor. I'd just gotten a decent chunk of money back from my old landlord, and for once, it felt like we had a little breathing room. So I decided to run errands, fill up the tank, grab some groceries, pick up my birth control prescription, all that boring adult stuff that makes you feel like you've got your act together. I was halfway home when I remembered the whiskey. I'd finished off the last of Noah's Buffalo Trace the night before, me and him cross-legged on the floor, passing the bottle back and forth, laughing at some dumb horror movie like we were kids again. I felt kind of guilty, figured what the hell, I was already out. Corks and Barrels was the only decent liquor store around, so I swung by. It was 10:03 a.m. I remember looking at the time on the dash and laughing to myself. Only in Dry Creek do folks start buying booze this early, and no one even raises an eyebrow. Corks and Barrels sat tucked beside a vape shop, with faded Bud Light flags fluttering on rusty poles out front. When I pulled into the nearly empty lot, there were just 2 other cars. One had a "Proud Dry Creek Booster Club" sticker, looked like it belonged to someone working there. The other was an old, beat-up blue pickup. I climbed out, tugged my sweatshirt down, and headed inside. The place smelled like stale beer and old carpet. A cheerful little bell jingled above the door, way too upbeat for a place like this. At the counter stood an older black man wearing a worn-out denim jacket. He had a 6-pack of Bud in one hand and a bottle of Apothic Red in the other. I noticed because my mom used to drink that wine when she wanted to feel fancy on a tight budget. I was standing behind him, scanning the whiskey shelf, when he turned and grinned at me. His teeth were yellowed but straight. "Damn girl," he said with a chuckle. "Starting early." I laughed softly, shifting the basket in my arms. "It's not for me," I said. "It's for my boyfriend. I kinda owe him a bottle." He nodded slowly, like he was weighing something. "Good woman." I smiled, a little awkward, and turned back to the shelves. I finally spotted the Buffalo Trace and made my way to the register. By the time I got there, the old man was gone. The cashier barely looked up, some young guy with messy brown hair and eyes like he hadn't slept in days. I tapped my card, grabbed the paper bag, and walked out. The air outside smelled like dust and hot pavement. The lot was still mostly empty, just my car, the employees, and that blue pickup. I hit the unlock button on my keys and headed toward my Honda. That's when I saw it. The pickup wasn't where it had been. It was now pulled sideways across the exit, blocking me in. Passenger window was rolled down. Sitting inside, staring straight at me, was the same old man from the store. Only now he wasn't alone. The guy in the driver's seat was massive, bald, arms folded like he was daring someone to give him a reason. His face was twisted into this deep, hard scowl that looked like it had been carved there years ago and never left. The old man leaned out the window, voice low and strange, like he meant it in some weird, sad way. "I wish I was your boyfriend," he said. And then he just stared. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't harmless. It felt wrong, like someone had reached inside me and clamped a hand around my heart. I froze. One hand clutched the paper bag, the other inching toward the taser Noah had insisted I carry. It looked like a pink flashlight, but it could drop a grown man in his tracks. I didn't say anything. Didn't smile. Just stared back, keeping my face blank. The driver never spoke, just kept glaring, like he was sizing me up. The whole thing probably lasted 30 seconds. Felt like a damn hour. Slow and steady, I set the bag down on the passenger seat. My heart was pounding so loud, it was all I could hear. like someone had cranked the volume inside my chest. I didn't take my eyes off the two of them as I slid my hand into my hoodie pocket, wrapping my fingers tight around the taser. I clicked it once. Zap! That quick burst of electricity cracked through the quiet like a whip. The reaction was instant. The driver's head snapped toward the sound. The old man jumped. Then the truck peeled out, tires shrieking across the broken pavement. They didn't loop around or hesitate. Just gunned it, bouncing over the curb like they didn't care about wrecking the suspension, and shot off down the road. And I just stood there shaking. Was I overreacting? Was it just some creepy old guy trying to flirt badly? But no, he'd waited. He sat there while I checked out, bagged my stuff, walked outside. He'd parked that truck just right to box me in. Stared at me like he had all the time in the world. This wasn't some joke. This wasn't nothing. I climbed into my car, locked every door, and drove home one-handed, my other hand wrapped tight around the taser the whole way. That night, I told Noah everything. He was livid. Not at me, at them. He stormed around the apartment like he was about to explode, fists clenched, jaw tight. Told me if he ever saw that truck again, he'd make damn sure those two never messed with another woman. We ended up moving a week later, sooner than we'd planned. And it wasn't just that run-in, it was the whole damn town. Dry Creek had something rotten in its core. You couldn't always see it right away, but once you did, you couldn't unsee it. Now, every time I pull into a liquor store parking lot, any parking lot, really, I check everything twice. I grip my keys between my fingers like little brass knuckles. I watch every car that pulls in. Every driver that looks too long. Some debts, like replacing a bottle of whiskey, you can pay off easy. But others? You don't even know you're racking them up until they come collecting. I never used to think I was one of those people who could just feel when something bad was coming. I always figured that was something out of a movie, or just paranoia. But that night taught me otherwise. Sometimes your body knows before your mind has a chance to catch up. My name is Avery Dalton. I'm 27. Married to Eli, my high school sweetheart. We've got 2 little girls, Chloe, who just turned 4, and Mira, not even 9 months yet. We live in a cozy little house on the east side of Maplewood, California. It's not a big city, but it's not exactly a small town either. Just one of those places where people mind their business and life moves steady, not fast. Maybe that's why I wasn't ready when normal turned into nightmare. It was a rainy Saturday night, the kind where the pavement shines under the streetlights and puddles look like black mirrors. Mira had gone down early after a rough day, and my grandma Irene, who lives with us, offered to stay home with her so Eli and I could run to the corner liquor and deli. I'd been craving something sweet, maybe some chocolate, or a bottle of Ménage à Trois Midnight Red. Eli figured he'd grab a 6-pack of Modelo while we were there. We bundled up Chloe in her pink puffer jacket, her favorite, and she was all amped up, calling it a candy mission. If it hadn't been pouring, we probably would have walked. It's only 4 blocks away, just across Brookfield Plaza. But the wind was biting, the streets were slick, and it just wasn't worth it. I remember Eli tossing me the keys and saying, "Drive slow, babe. These people forget how to drive when it rains." I laughed, because he was absolutely right. Looking back now, I wish that was the worst part of our night. We pulled into the lot around 8:51. There were just 2 cars already there, a black sedan idling by the front door, and a gray Dodge Charger that rolled in right after us. 2 guys hopped out of the Charger, dressed like they were headed to a club, tight jeans, flashy jackets, shiny shoes. Looked harmless enough. Eli carried Chloe on his hip. She was rattling off all the candy she wanted, and we all walked in together. The 2 guys followed close behind, giving the cashier a casual, "What's up?" nod. The guy behind the counter didn't even lift his eyes from his phone. Eli headed straight for the beer cooler in the back, and I wandered down the snack aisle with Chloe's tiny hand in mine. The place looked like 100 other corner stores, buzzing fluorescent lights, shelves jammed with chips, candy, ramen, beef jerky. It smelled like cigars and mopped water, with the heater rattling up above like it was on its last leg. I crouched down so Chloe could pick between a pack of Skittles and a chocolate bar. She picked both. Of course. Please, Mommy, just this once? She begged, flashing that gap-toothed grin of hers. I laughed under my breath. How could I say no? We met Eli at the register. He'd grabbed his six-pack and tossed a bottle of Apothic Red on the counter too. The two club guys were behind us, cracking jokes about whether to splurge on Grey Goose or just grab something cheap. The cashier, Franklin, a guy we'd seen a few times before, rang us up like he had all the time in the world, barely glancing up. That's when we heard the yelling. At first it was muffled, drowned out by the thick glass doors and the rain hammering the roof. Then it got clearer. Louder. Come on. Come at me. I ain't scared. I'm a tough motherfucker. The whole store froze. Even Chloe stopped her candy chatter, her little hand clamping tight around mine. Eli turned his head just enough to glance outside, his jaw flexing. I couldn't see much through the rain-smeared glass, just the cars parked outside and a city bus idling across the street. Maybe it's just some drunk, I said quietly to Eli, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. But 6 seconds later, the front door slammed open so hard it bounced off the wall with a bang. A man came stumbling in, soaked to the bone, covered in mud, eyes wild. He looked around 60, but life had dragged him a whole lot further than that. He wore a filthy denim jacket that hung off him like it didn't belong, jeans soaked and stuck to his legs, boots caked in wet dirt. Even from across the room, the smell hit like a punch, sour sweat, cheap liquor, and something sharp and chemical I couldn't place. He locked eyes on Eli instantly. You! He screamed, pointing a shaking finger. You think you're better than me, huh? You fucking brown piece of shit! Come on, hit me! Kill me! I froze. Chloe whimpered and buried her face against my side. Eli didn't flinch. He was calm, almost too calm. He slipped his wallet back into his pocket and subtly moved, planting himself right between us and the man. Don't engage, he said under his breath in Spanish. Hold Chloe tight. Stay close. The two club guys behind us tensed up but stayed quiet. Franklin, the cashier, had backed up a step, eyes darting to the panic button under the counter, but his hand just hovered there, unsure. The man whipped around toward the guys behind us. What about you, huh? You pretty boys wanna go? He threw a wild swing, barely a punch, at one of them. The guy flinched so hard he knocked into the chip rack, sent a couple bags tumbling to the floor. Nobody moved. Nobody said a word. My hands were slick with sweat. My heart thudded against my ribs like it wanted out. I thought about the knife I didn't have. I thought about how fast a person can move if they really want to hurt someone. And I thought about Chloe, my baby, and how if it came down to it, I'd put myself between her and anything without a second thought. Eli exhaled once, slow and controlled. Then he spoke. Calm, firm. Look, man, he said, voice steady but serious. You made your point. No one here wants trouble. You got two options. Walk out of here, or wait for the cops. The guy swayed on his feet, blinking hard. Then his eyes landed on me. Then Chloe. And something shifted in him. He muttered something I couldn't catch, something about kids, about not wanting to mess with the family. And then he ran. Just like that, bolted out the door and into the storm. The silence that followed was instant and heavy. Everyone seemed to breathe at once. One of the club guys mumbled, "Thanks, man," to Eli. Franklin gave a shaky nod, hands trembling as he finished bagging our stuff. Spacesuit? You here all alone? He asked, voice dry and cracked like he hadn't used it in days. Every instinct in my body screamed run. But I forced a small laugh. Just grabbing a few things. Happy 4th. I squeezed past him, feeling his arm brush mine a little too deliberately as I slipped by. My heart was pounding. I moved fast toward the front, trying not to run. The woman behind the counter still didn't seem to notice anything was off. I threw down some cash, not even wanting to mess with my card. As I shoved the bottles into a brown paper bag, I heard the bell behind me. He was following. I didn't look back, but I knew. Outside, the sun had dipped just low enough to cast long shadows between the parked cars. I picked up my pace, walking fast, keys already in my hand. Halfway to my car, I couldn't help it. I glanced over my shoulder. There he was, standing in the doorway, watching. No, grinning star. That same grin that made my stomach knot up and my whole body go cold. Come on, come on, I muttered to myself as I fumbled with my keys. I finally got the door open and dove in, slamming the locks down behind me. My hands were shaking as I jammed the key into the ignition. I started the car and looked up. He was still there. And then he started walking. Not running. Walking, slow and steady, like he had all the time in the world. Like he knew I couldn't go anywhere. I floored it. The tires squealed as I peeled out of the lot, vision blurring at the edges from the adrenaline. I didn't feel like I could breathe again until I was at least 2 miles out, driving past neighborhoods full of kids lighting sparklers in their driveways. I finally pulled over, trying to catch my breath. That's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stared at the screen, a cold wave rising in my chest. I didn't pick up. It rang out and went to voicemail. A few seconds later, another buzz. Voicemail notification. I sat there frozen, then finally tapped play. The message was full of static, crackly, distorted. But I could still make out the words. A whisper. You forgot something, Sierra? I almost threw the phone across the car. How did he know my name? I hadn't said it. I hadn't shown ID. I hadn't spoken to anyone. Panic clawed at my chest as I slammed the car back into drive and tore toward home. Logan was outside, already messing with the grill when I skidded into the driveway. I jumped out of the car like I was on fire, waving the wine bottles like I just survived a war. You good? He asked, eyebrows rising. Logan chuckled when he saw me waving the wine bottles like some kind of prize. But the smile dropped fast when he saw my face. Sierra, what happened? I shook my head, mouth dry as paper. I didn't know how to explain it without sounding completely unhinged. There was this guy, I finally said, at the liquor store. He followed me. Left me a voicemail. Logan's expression hardened like concrete. He grabbed my phone and listened to the message. I watched his knuckles go pale. We're calling the cops, he said, no hesitation. The officers were polite, sure, but that didn't mean they were helpful. Since the guy hadn't touched me or directly threatened me, there wasn't much they could do. Could have been a wrong number, one of them said with a shrug. Bullshit. I knew what I'd heard. The rest of that night, I couldn't relax. Every firework that popped made me flinch. Every rustle of leaves outside made me look twice. We went to bed around midnight, but I didn't sleep. I sat up, staring out the window, waiting. Part of me expected to see him, right there at the edge of the yard, watching, waiting. But he never came. At least, not that night. 2 weeks later, I found something stuck under my windshield wiper. A bottle of wine. Apothic Dark. Same one he was holding the night he cornered me. Taped to the neck was a note, just 5 words, scrawled in shaky handwriting. See you soon, beautiful. I moved out of Woodridge the next month. I don't go to liquor stores alone anymore. And I never, ever ignore the sound of a bell over a door. Because he's still out there. Still watching. And next time, I might not be so lucky. I always thought night shifts were easy money. When I first started working at River Point Liquors, I actually found the place kind of comforting. A quiet, half-forgotten shop wedged between a broken laundromat and a boarded-up bakery on the edge of town. After 10 p.m., foot traffic was practically nothing, just a few regulars dragging in after long shifts, calloused hands reaching for cheap beer or bottom-shelf whiskey. Not glamorous, but it covered the rent while I tried to figure out what the hell to do with my life. I didn't mind the hours either. Something about the hum of the flickering neon outside, the soft jazz playing low through dusty speakers, the smell of old cardboard. It was weirdly peaceful. But that night didn't feel peaceful at all. It was Friday, well, technically Saturday morning, 2:28 a.m. by the register clock. I'd already locked the side door, dimmed the back lights, and was counting down the minutes until close. The parking lot was mostly empty, just my car, and this beat-up blue van that had been sitting way out near the edge since midnight. I'd noticed it earlier but didn't think much of it. This part of town wasn't exactly known for its scenery. I was leaning over the counter, checking my phone. 2 missed calls from my roommate, Natalie. She was probably trying to get me to bring home something for the party she had planned for tomorrow. I smiled a little and texted her back, almost done. See you soon, asterisk asterisk. Just as I put the phone down, the bell over the door jingled. A man walked in. Tall. Heavy-set. Thick ginger hair curling out from under a grimy trucker cap. Oversized army green hoodie, stained jeans, and boots that scraped loudly against the tile. He didn't look around like he was shopping. He looked around like he was memorizing the place. Like he was taking inventory of me. My gut twisted. Still, I forced a customer service smile and said the usual. Hey there, let me know if you need anything. He didn't answer. Just shuffled slowly toward the coolers in the back. There was something about how he moved. No real purpose, no rush. Like he had nowhere else to be and no one waiting on him. I glanced at the clock. 2:23 a.m. 5 more minutes. Just 5. I kept repeating it to myself. I pretended to check stock behind the counter, but I kept stealing looks. He was standing there, cooler door open, just staring at the shelves. Not grabbing anything. Not even blinking. Sweat started to gather at the back of my neck. Finally, he picked a random 6-pack and trudged back toward the counter. I scanned it fast. $9.53, I said, voice a little too high, too cheerful. He fished around in his pocket and pulled out a crumpled 20. When he handed it over, his fingers brushed against mine. It lingered, just a second too long. I flinched, but kept my fake smile stuck to my face like duct tape. Keep the change, he muttered, voice low and raspy. Thanks. Have a good night, I said automatically, sliding the beer across in a paper bag. He didn't leave right away. Just stood there, staring. The air felt thick, like trying to breathe through wet wool. You work here every night? He asked suddenly. I let out a nervous little laugh. Not every night. Just covering tonight. Technically not a lie. I had picked up this extra shift. He smiled. Crooked little teeth like chipped stones. I like it here, he said. It's cozy. Then, slow as anything, he picked up the bag and walked out. I locked the door the second he crossed the threshold. But I didn't stop watching. He walked across the lot, back toward that blue van. But he didn't get in. He just stood there, staring at me through the glass. Even from that far away, I could feel it. His eyes on me like hands pressing down. I ducked behind the counter, heart slamming in my chest. Stay calm. Wait him out. I started wiping down the counter, trying to act normal, even though my hands were shaking. I checked my phone again. No new messages. Natalie was probably asleep by now. 2:36 a.m. Almost done. I gathered my stuff, tucked my purse under my hoodie so it didn't stand out, then double-checked the back door. Locked. Still secure. When I came back to the front, the van's headlights blinked on. I jumped, almost dropped my keys. The van crawled forward, inch by inch, until it parked right in front of the store. Engine running. Just sitting there. I froze. What do I do? I could call the cops, sure. But what if he took off before they showed up? Would they even believe me? Would they do anything? I waited. Maybe he'd leave. But he didn't. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Still there. Still idling. That low engine hum felt like it was shaking something loose in my chest. I couldn't wait anymore. I texted Natalie. Creepy dude outside. Call me in 5. Pretend it's urgent. Asterisk asterisk. Maybe if he thought someone was waiting for me, it'd rattle him enough to leave. I reached under the counter and grabbed the heavy-duty flashlight, the big metal kind that doubled as a club, and shoved it into my hoodie pocket, fingers wrapped tight around it. I took a deep breath, unlocked the door, and stepped out. The night air hit like a slap, sharp and cold. I walked fast toward my car, which was only a few feet away. Halfway there, the van's headlights shut off. My chest tightened. I fumbled with my keys, panic rising up and choking out everything else. I was nearly at the door when I heard it. Crunch. Boots on gravel. Hey! A voice called out, too casual, too close. I didn't turn around. Didn't speak. Just yanked my car door open. But before I could get inside, a hand clamped down on my arm, rough and sweaty, fingers like a vice. Where you running to, sweetheart? He rasped, dragging me back. I didn't think. I just swung. The flashlight smashed into him with a solid thunk, somewhere between his shoulder and jaw. He grunted and let go. I dove into the car, slammed the door, and hit the lock so hard my thumb throbbed. Through the window, I saw him stumble back, hand on his head. Then his face twisted into something feral. He pounded on the glass with both fists, shouting something I couldn't make out. I jammed the key into the ignition, threw it in reverse, and tore out of the lot. The tires shrieked. In the mirror, I saw him chasing me. He made it a few feet before collapsing at the curb, still screaming. I didn't stop driving until I hit the police station 2 towns over. I sat in the lot with both hands locked around the wheel until the shaking in my body finally started to fade. Inside, the cops were kind. Took my statement. Sent a unit back to the store. They found the van behind the laundromat. Abandoned. Inside they found zip ties, duct tape, a stained mattress, and several knives. He wasn't just a creep. He was a hunter. For days after, I barely slept. Every creak in the house sounded like boots behind me. Every shadow looked like his silhouette, waiting, watching. River Point Liquors changed the locks. Installed cameras. Made everything safer. But I never went back. I got a job at a bookstore instead. Bright. Open. Full of people. Still, even now, when I close up and hear the soft jingle of a door behind me, my chest tightens, just for a second. Because somewhere out there, he might still be looking. Another quiet little shop. Another girl working alone. Another easy target. But not me. Never again. I always loved running errands with my mom. Growing up in Woodridge, a small town where excitement was more of a rumor than a reality, those trips felt like mini adventures. The town didn't have much. A corner diner. A movie theater held together by duct tape and nostalgia. And Lacey's Liquor. Lacey's sold everything from whiskey to birthday cards, and for some reason, I thought it was the coolest place ever. I was 8. My little sister Zoe was barely 3, strapped into the cart with her tiny legs swinging and her voice running nonstop to whoever would listen. She didn't care about the store. But me? I loved it. I'd wander the aisles, checking out the weird bottles with dusty labels, the odd collectibles no one ever seemed to buy, and my favorite, this tiny toy section near the register. It was always the same few shelves. Plastic animals, stuffed bears, faded action figures nobody had touched in years. But to me, it felt like treasure. That night, the store was quieter than usual. It was just past 9 p.m. when we walked in, the October air sharp against my cheeks. Mom needed a bottle of white wine. Nothing fancy. Zoe giggled at some cheap plastic toy she grabbed from a shelf while Mom pushed the cart slowly down the narrow aisles. Overhead, the fluorescent lights buzzed and flickered, casting this weird greenish glow on everything. The whole place smelled like old wood and sharp alcohol, and for some reason, it felt like time moved slower inside. Like the store was holding its breath. As always, I made a beeline for the toy aisle. Didn't matter that it barely had anything new, those tired shelves always drew me in. Cluttered. Neglected. but fascinating. And I could spend forever standing there, just looking. I was squatting down, lost in my own little world, brushing the edge of a beat-up box that promised space warriors in big, bold letters, already spinning up stories in my head. That's when I felt it. Not a sound, not a shadow, just a shift in the air. A change so subtle, but sharp enough to make me look up. He was there, standing at the far end of the aisle. He wasn't tall, but somehow, he felt big. His presence filled up the cramped space in a way that made it hard to breathe. Dark clothes, heavy black boots, a thick, worn coat, faded jeans that looked like they'd lived through years of bad days. His hair was messy, his beard scruffy, and his eyes, God, his eyes were locked on me. Not just glancing. Locked. A shiver slid up my spine and coiled in my chest. I didn't know what it was exactly. His stillness, maybe, or how he stared like he was trying to memorize my face. But everything in me tensed. My mom had always told me to be wary of strangers, to stay close, speak politely, and never go anywhere alone. But this didn't feel like a simple stranger encounter. This felt wrong. "Looking at the toys, huh?" he said, voice low, like gravel rolling over steel. He wasn't rude. He wasn't angry. Just off. Like he was trying to make conversation for no reason, like he didn't really care what my answer was. I nodded, too scared to speak, my heart thudding like a drum in my chest. "Which one do you like the most?" he asked, stepping closer. His eyes never left mine. I scrambled for something to say. That one," I muttered, pointing at a little green alien figurine. He smiled. Or tried to. It didn't look right, just a slow pull of lips that didn't match the eyes. "I could buy it for you if you want," he said, voice weirdly soft. Too soft. Something in my gut recoiled. Why would a stranger offer to buy me a toy? My mom's voice echoed in my head, "If it feels wrong, get away." "I don't need it," I said, barely more than a whisper. His face shifted, eyebrows pulling in like I'd surprised him. "Why not? I can get it for you," he said again, trying to coax me. "I don't want it," I blurted, the words spilling out in a rush. And I was already backing away, feet moving before my brain caught up. I turned and walked, quickly, around the corner into the next aisle. I hoped he'd stay put, that I'd never see him again. But when I looked back over my shoulder, he was there. Following. Quiet. Close enough that I could still feel the tension, far enough that it looked casual. I sped up. Made my way into the snack aisle, trying to act like I wasn't scared, like I was just browsing chips or crackers. But inside, panic was climbing higher and higher. I scanned the aisle for someone, anyone, but it was empty. Quiet in a way that suddenly felt dangerous. And he was still behind me. Not rushing. Not closing in. Just there. Watching. My legs started to shake. The hair on my arms stood straight up. Then, like a light in the fog, I saw her, my mom, down by the wine rack, focused on a bottle. Relief hit me like a wave. I kept my pace up, didn't look back, just moved toward her like she was a life raft. When I reached her, I gripped the side of the cart like I was anchoring myself. "Everything okay, sweetie?" she asked, glancing down. "Yeah," I said quickly. "Just looking at toys." My voice wobbled, but I tried to sound normal. I didn't leave her side after that. I kept my eyes down, locked on the floor tiles. I didn't want to risk another glance, didn't want to see if he was still watching. We finished shopping. Headed to the register. Paid. As we stepped outside into the night air, I finally let myself look back. He was still there. Standing at the edge of the toy aisle. Not moving. Just staring. From that distance, I couldn't make out his expression. But I didn't need to. I could feel it, the weight of his eyes sticking to me like grease. He didn't follow us out. He didn't speak again. But I know now. I came close to something worse that night. Too close. At the time, I didn't understand what my body was trying to tell me. But looking back, my instincts saved me. And they still do. Now, whenever I step into a store, I pay attention. I trust that small voice when it whispers not this one. Because sometimes, the most dangerous moments don't come with warning signs or loud alarms. Sometimes, they're wrapped in silence, in a quiet aisle, under buzzing lights, when no one's watching. But he was. And I'll never forget that.